How important is sex in a relationship?
It depends on the couple. For me personally, I think it is very important because it's a physical expression of our love, and the longer we go without it, the more I think something is wrong. It all depends on the couple. People in long-term relationships, I mean 25 years or more, form other bonds, and as such, the physical expression of love isn't as important as when they're just starting out.
Depends on the person. I personally do not want to have sex, but for others it may be one of the most important things in the relationship. There's no one answer to this question.
It's not very important with my friend's family, but pretty important in a romantic relationship.
As an asexual person, my opinion is probably unique law. I don't think it's important literally at all.
Individuals run the gamut from asexual to hypersexual, and the answer is highly individualized for that reason. Sex drive does fluctuate over time with hormonal and life changes as well. I'm hypersexual to varying degrees and require frequent sex in a romantic relationship. Ideal would be once or twice a day, but I'm in a LDRRN, so we just make up for lost time on the days we have together.
If there's no sex, you're basically roommates. Very important for me. I feel unloved and unwanted if I am not getting it often enough. It depends on the age, I think. When you are young, sex rules the relationship. As you get older and older, it becomes less and less important. It's important in the first several years, but not so much in the later years. Married 19 years.
Depends on the relationship and the people in it.
I think it's one of the most important things in a relationship. You have to have some form of intimacy, even if it isn't sexual. I don't think it's important literally at all. Sex is just a fun activity, and trying to staple it as a prime important condition in a relationship is quite nonsense. A relationship is based around your connection and consideration for the other person's well-being and livelihood. Sex isn't love. Love is making breakfast for your favorite person 'cause they woke up late from a long day prior. Love is getting them candles and making them tea because they have been feeling discombobulated with the stresses of careless idiots day to day. Love is a kiss, hug, and good morning from behind at random because you saw them and they are simply put your favorite person, and you always want them to have their importance and awesomeness recognized because they deserve it, and their happiness fills you with joy. Sex is a profane action utilized for childbearing and generally a high dopamine activity. To do sex is fun and awesome, don't get me wrong, but it isn't loving in itself. It really depends. If my spouse is sick, then it's 0. If my spouse is healthy, then 90. Stress, hormones, illness, diet, and other things affect sex drive a lot. If I know my spouse doesn't want sex or can't perform because of illness, then that's fine. If it's because he's being irresponsible with his body, then I won't be too happy. How important is sex in a relationship? Variable.
It is one of the most important things. I honestly think that without sex, they are just a kind of friends. I know there are other kinds of love, but it was just an opinion. I'm sorry if anyone feels offended. And I know that a friend with sex is a friend with benefits. But I think sex is important in a relationship. And another thing, my first language is not English, so I don't have many words. My culture is not the same. My culture revolves around sex and romantic love. Depends on the relationship. Person to pet? Not important at all, in fact, quite negative. Buddies wrong to the range or have BBQs together? Don't know, ask them. Committed dating relationship? More important than you think. Marriage? Essential and vital. It's all about the goal of the relationship, honestly, and what its purpose is. Brunch buddies probably don't need to screw to have a good friendship. Married couples do need to be physically active together. I just don't see the point of it without sex. But, ultimately, it depends on the individuals involved, and what their sex drive and the purpose of the relationship is to them. There really is no clear-cut answer to that question.
A relationship without sex is a friendship.
It's the most important thing to me. But I'm a full-blown sociopath, so take it for what it's worth.
My husband and I are both 34, we've been together 20 years, and sex is very important in our relationship. We have sex every day to most days twice a day. I love it. I know everybody is different. Some people don't look at sex as important as others.
This thread is full of emotional nonsense and the question is vague. There is no proper answer. The best answer I can think of is this. Men need to ejaculate around once a month, relieve cravings and health reasons. Women can and do live without sex, however, if they never have a child, they can run into health issues later. So overall, it can be far more necessary for men, and why men can cheat if sex is withheld. Yes, everyone can be different, but the above suits nearly everyone.
It really depends. Both my boyfriend and I are quite sexual beings, so I would say it is a very important aspect in our relationship. I have a friend who's dating some guy that she hardly has sex with, but other aspects of their relationship are just simply more important to them. Give or take, I don't care too much.
Depends on the age sex drive. For example, if one of the two has higher sex drive and is not satisfied, it will be complaint. Depends on the relationship. I know someone who stupidly bases compatibility solely off how much they enjoy sex with that person the first time. If it's good, they're in love and planning the wedding. If it's bad, they leave. And then once they get to know the person, they can't figure out why they like them to begin with, and sex gets stale again. So they break up. If you have relationships like this, sex is literally all the relationship is based off. Stop fucking and stop liking one another. But if it's based on other factors, like an actual personality, it's much less important but still a priority. It's not important at all, TBH. I mean, I'd do it every day if my boyfriend had the stamina. We're in this probably uncommon situation where I have a much higher sex drive than my boyfriend. But I can take it or leave it. I don't get frustrated if I don't do it every day.
Not important at all if your relationship is with your mechanic. Unless you can pay with hand jobs. But in a romantic relationship it's fairly important. But not essential.
It's not the most important thing, but it's a requirement.
Necessary but not sufficient.
It really depends on person to person. For me, it's not really important. I don't really need sex.
One of my ex-boyfriend's mom once told me that we all have boxes that need to be ticked. Of course, taking into consideration that nobody is perfect and all flaws, and situations compromise and boxes. Very important all the weather and the boxes of my brother. Then you're most likely not going to feel completely satisfied in your relationship. So it just depends on what's important to that person. A person with a low libido might not have sex as one of those important boxes. But a person with high libido most likely will. For me, sex is important in a relationship. It's not the main factor of my relationship, but it's still important.
Depends on the couple. For me, it's not all that important.
How high do you put it?
Depends on the person and relation and how strong their sex drive is, as well as how sexually compatible and comfortable they are in their relationship. Also, there needs to be clear communication and boundaries and compromise. Story time: when I was with my ex-boyfriend, I was still a virgin, he wasn't, and I was wanting that deep physical relationship, and he was promising me, "Oh, we can have it whenever you're ready." Yeah, when I was getting ready to decide I was ready, he started to discourage me and make me feel bad for wanting to have sex. I was getting the feeling he was asexual, which would have been and is fine, but his attempts to discourage me from having sex was not only frustrating, but it made me feel disgusted at myself, and I wondered if I was wrong for having those desires. And he was not willing to bend or compromise for me. It was one of the things that lead into our breakup. Though here's the thing, he had been sending texts to girls over the phone with some implied content, so it got me thinking he just didn't want to have sex with me. Luckily for me, I found a better relationship with people who actually match my sex drive and beyond.
Everyone has a different level of significance attached to it. For me, there is a huge feel-good chemical release when I'm with my husband, even without me orgasming. It makes me feel cuddle and close to him and helps us to mend small disagreements, not huge arguments. OFC. It also is a big stress reliever. I find we argue more if we haven't had sex at the very least every 3 days barring injury illness. The only important thing.
Got to have it. Prefer twice a week at minimum.
When you consider that the urge to pair up is driven by an instinct to reproduce, sex is a very critical part of the equation.
Depends if you are asexual, demisexual, mental and physical health. When I was in the dating scene, it was always a priority of mine, along with being child-free forever. So best thing to do is to ask yourself how important it is to you and how important you want it to be for your partner.
From 1 to 10, I'd say 8 for me personally. I cannot have sex when my partner is sick or not in the mood, because it's obviously only fun when both enjoy it. But to me, it is one of the backbones of a relationship and I don't want to go without it.
It's all subjective. Plenty of Christian, unmarried couples have remained abstinent, and it hasn't been any more or less difficult for them. Of course, many secular couples have sex with every single partner they have, and they think it's the most important thing.
Extremely important. This reminds me of what Lois said in Malcolm in the Middle.
I'm not picky about it. So long as it's not off the table, I'm not that worried about how often I get laid. Hell, even in my early 20s, when most guys are obsessed with sex, it wasn't my purpose in life law. But I will admit I desired it more then than I do now 15 years later. If you're asking what my ideal frequency would be, I'd say twice a week or so.
I had once heard this from someone, would like to repeat it here. If a relationship is a house, sex is the bathroom. You wouldn't live in a bathroom, but you would prefer to live in a house which has a bathroom compared to one which doesn't have one.
That depends on each person. Obviously. Depends on the person. To me, not at all, as I'm a sex-neutral leaning opposed asexual person. However, to some it may be more or very important.
Significant element. Not the only one. It's not a big deal, until you aren't having any.